every individual with Down syndrome who is having a meltdown, regardless of their age, has to be handled differently, of course. There are personality differences which are obvious, but there are other factors, including secondary diagnoses, which complicate dealing with meltdowns. But last week, I had an experience with my 35-year-old son, Jonathan, that reminded me of a technique that works. It really works. Long before Jonathan was born, I read a book titled Love is Letting Go of Fear by Dr. Gerald Jamblowski. And in it, there is a gem that I wrote down and I've kept ever since. Here it is. What people of all ages can use in a moment of distress is not agreement or disagreement. They need someone to recognize what it is they're experiencing. They need someone to recognize what it is they're experiencing. So let me tell you what happened. I was visiting my son Jonathan in Cincinnati, where I raised him for 22 years and where he got amazing benefits so that he's been able to live in his own apartment for the last 13 years with the help of a caregiver. So I flew from Los Angeles to Cincinnati, COVID notwithstanding, so I could spend a few days with him. And he had asked me to fix 3 problems on his Mac. Now, Jonathan is devoted to his computer. He's on it most of the time, exploring all kinds of music and other quite safe things, thank you God. And he had 3 problems, and he was going to ask me to fix them. However, nobody touches his computer. He goes into anxiety mode if anyone even comes near his computer. So this was a very big deal. What this meant was he really wanted those problems fixed. So I spent 2.5 hours on the phone with 4 different Apple experts trying to fix the computer issue. In the meantime, of course, Jonathan is in the next room with his caregiver who is soothingly speaking to him, but that's not really helping. So Jonathan's distress starts accelerating. 2.5 hours is a long time, right? So finally, Jonathan understands that I did fix 2 of the problems. The 3rd one cannot be fixed. So his meltdown went into overdrive. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know what I'm describing. You've experienced it yourself. Now, he had had his heart set on having supper together every night and a movie while we were having supper every night that I was there. But by this time, he was in the next room yelling, "No supper, no movie, Mom goes back to Los Angeles." So I finally got off the phone with Apple and sat close to Jonathan on the sofa. And then I remembered this technique. It's a technique I wrote about in my book, Down Syndrome Parenting 101, and I automatically moved into it. I sat next to him on the sofa, close but not touching him. He was not ready to be touched. And I sat quietly next to him and I said, "That was very upsetting for you, wasn't it?" Meltdown starts coming down. He says, "Yes." I said, "That was so frustrating for you." "Yes." And so I talked just a little bit more with him along the same vein. And then we were quiet together. And then suddenly he got this little smile on his face and he turned to me and he threw his arms around me and he said, "Supper together, movie together." I was blown away. This technique had worked on occasion for him when he was a child or when he was a teen, but I really had no idea that it was going to work for a 35-year-old man. It just seemed like the natural thing to do. So those words of Dr. Jamblowski are so important. What people of all ages can use in a moment of distress is not agreement or disagreement. What they need is someone to recognize what it is they're experiencing. They need someone to recognize what it is they're experiencing. So I've detailed various non-compliance strategies in my book, Down Syndrome Parenting 101, and I'll give you information on that book on the last slide. So will this work for everyone? every time, everywhere. Nothing does that. But this is definitely a tool that I hope you will keep close to your heart, because we all need someone to acknowledge, to recognize what it is we're experiencing. We all need that, especially sometimes mom and dad need that. So take care, and I'll see you next time.